I'm going to read a selection of my poems, choosing those which I think now represented for me at the time of writing some new development or some kind of discovery in myself about my poetry. It's not always possible, of course, to say what this discovery was. Sometimes the use of a new rhythm, sometimes to do rather with the subject matter of the poem. I'm going to read now the first of these poems, which I wrote when I was 21. It is called Cefalu. These softs and solids, this clear, that rough, join not long after dawn in willing peace. The blue hollow not stirred by the seed of a breeze, a fallen marble block, the cape, the sea not stained by a gust or submerged shower, holds glassed on its woman's face no warning of a cloud. The rocky front on which I lie bears to the play of early light its traces of invited wounds, a soldier resting and with his helmet lifted back. Dew on his cheek has left its torn white threads. Some tide has sunk from us, not only the night. The damaged sails and oars have sunk, the battle is snuffed. The visitant steps no longer from the sky. Her house is long broken, younger ramparts crumple, harness rusts. This calm yet deceives. It is a weariness of too much strength, smooths itself over with a polished care. Such peace, a balance built of ardent powers, such fetters are detachment, as if a love had prospered, dropped in breathless sleep, and two, left by the darkness in each other's arms, were lying, ignorant of all but self. Some want there is while blood still moves, though at a whisper should the never twice minute flee, a voice once locked in the ground as in me, or closed under sea or washed to air, should come, should cry, insisting in a song we are not dead. For to keep the shining water is but one way, to have the stone but one, to own the air but one, and drowned or broken, rotted away, I should not need these lover-like pretences. But the day will not blind me, the silence not make me deaf, and solitude, it seems, will never kill, though bedded with solitude, my breath is still here. So, since we live, we must speak. Themselves, these friends, dissolve their truce. Each again breathes, again knows the other, and himself. The flood, slowly with trails of a wing, is striped. One rush of freshness poured like silk frays out its winding fringes in a circle. One chases off from side to side with varying force. Bands of these light persons brush, gathering rumours, furtherers of quarrels, the headland's height. Blades and tongues and minute fins of wind will combine to dapple with cool the molten field and crisp the heavy flattened swathes of watery hay. The eastern sun beats nearer, the dew dulls, falls or flies, and cloud like a suspected coast of hills drives up, procession of silver rocks, and I rise, trembling, stretch, struck to the bone by the glitter of a fire and water world. The next poem I'm going to read is called An Epistle to a Patron. I wrote this when I was 22, and I think it was the first poem I wrote which gave me the feeling that I could fuse a large amount of material into one organic unity. The poem was suggested by the letter which Leonardo da Vinci wrote as a young man to the Duke of Milan, offering his services to him as an architect, an engineer, a military engineer, and an artist. An Epistle to a Patron. My lord, hearing lately of your opulence in promises, and your house busy with parasites, of your hands full of favours, your statutes admirable as music, and no fear of your arms not prospering, I have considered how to serve you and breed from my talents these few secrets which I shall make plain to your intelligent glory, You should understand that I have plotted, being in command of all the ordinary engines of defence and offence, 115 buildings, less others less complete. Complete, some are courts of serene stone, some civil structures of a warlike elegance, as bridges, sewers, aqueducts, and citadels of brick, with which I declare the fact that your nature is to vanquish. For these I have acquired a knowledge of the habits of numbers and of various tempers and skill in setting firm sets of pure bare members, which will rise hanging together like an argument with beams, ties, and sistering pilasters. The lintels and windows with mouldings as round as a girl's chin, thresholds to libraries, halls that cannot be entered without a sensation as of myrrh, by your vermilion officers, your sages and dancers. There will be chambers like the recovery of a sick man, your closet waiting not less suitably shadowed than the heart, and the coffers of a ceiling to reflect your diplomatic taciturnities. You may commission hospitals, huge granaries that will smile to bear your filial plunders, and stables washed with a silver lime, in whose middle tower seated, in the slight acridity, you may watch the copper thunder kept in the sulky flanks of your horse, a rolling field of necks glad to be groomed, the strong crupper, the edged hoof, and the long back seductive and rebellious to saddles. And barracks, fortresses in need of no vest save light, light that to me is breath, food, and drink. I live by effects of light. I live to catch it, to break it, as an orator plays off against each other and his theme his casual gems, and so with light, twisted in strings, plucked, crossed, or knotted, or crumbled, as it may be allowed to be by leaves, or clanged back by lakes and rocks, or otherwise beaten, or else built and spread like a feast of honey, dripping through delightful voids and creeping along long fractures, brimming carved canals, bowls, and lacrimatories with pearls, all this the work of now advancing, now withdrawing faces, whose use I know. I know what slabs thus will be soaked to some thumb's depth by the sun, and where to rob them, what colour stifles in your intact quarries, what sand silted in your river gorges will well mix with the dust of flint. I know what wood to cut by what moon in what weather, of your sea winds, your hill wind. Therefore, tyrant, let me learn your highways, ways of sandstone, roads of the oak leaf, and your sea ways. Send me to dig dry graves, exposing what you want. I must attend your orgies and debates, let others apply for austerities. Admit me to your witty table, stuff me with urban levities, feed me, bind me to a prudish luxury. Free me thus and with a workshop from my household, consisting of a pregnant wife, one female and one boy child, and an elder bastard with other properties. These let me regard, let me neglect, and let what I begin be finished. Save me, noble sir, from the agony of starved and privy explorations, such as those I stumble from a hot bed to make, to follow lines to which the night sky holds only faint contingencies. These flights with no end but failure, and failure not to end them, these palliate or prevent. I wish for liberty, let me then be tied, and seeing too much, I aspire to be constrained by your emblems of birth and triumph, and between the obligations of your future and the checks of actual state, to flourish, adapt the stubs of an interminable descent, and place the crested key to confident vaults, with a placid flurry of petals and bosom and lips, will stony functionaries support the persuasion so beyond proof of your power. I will record in peculiar scrolls your alien alliances, fit an apartment for your eastern hostage, extol in basalt your father, praise with white festoons the goddess, your lady, and for your death, which will be mine, prepare an encasement as if of solid blood. And so let me forget, let me remember, that this is stick, stone, metal, trash, which I will pile and hack, my hands will stain and bend, none better knowing how to gain from the slow pains of a marble, bruised, breathing strange climates. Being pressed as I am, being broken by wealth and poverty, torn between strength and weakness, take me, choose to relieve me, to receive of me, and must you not agree, as you have been to some, a great giver of banquets, of respite from swords, who shook out figured cloths, who rained coin, a donor of laurel and of grapes, a font of profuse intoxicants, and so to be so too for me. And none too soon, since the panting mind, rather than baron, will be prostitute, and once I served a herd of merchants. But since I will be faithful, and my virtue is such, though far from home, let what is yours be mine, and this be a match, as many have been proved, enduring exiles and blazed, not without issue in returning shows. Your miserly freaks, your envies, wracks, and poisons not out of mind, although not told, since often born. Indeed, how should it be that you employed them less than we? But now be flattered a little to indulge the extravagant gist of this communication, for my pride puts all in doubt, and at present I have no patience. I have simply hope, and I submit me to your judgment, which will be just. I'm going to go on with what is probably my best-known poem, an anthology piece, in fact, called Soldiers Bathing, which I wrote during the last war. I don't know why it became an anthology piece. I don't myself consider it to be so much better than some other poems I've written, but the poet himself cannot, of course, always judge a poem of this type. I'll read then Soldiers Bathing. The sea at evening moves across the sand. Under a reddening sky I watch the freedom of a band of soldiers who belong to me. Stripped bare for bathing in the sea, they shout and run in the warm air. Their flesh, worn by the trade of war, revives, and my mind towards the meaning of it strives. All's pathos now, the body that was gross, rank, ravenous, disgusting in the act or in repose, all fever, filth, and sweat, its bestial strength and bestial decay, by pain and labour grows at length fragile and luminous. Poor bare forked animal, conscious of his desires and needs and flesh that rise and fall, stands in the soft air, tasting after toil the sweetness of his nakedness, letting the sea waves coil their frothy tongues about his feet, forgets his hatred of the war, its terrible pressure that begets a machinery of death and slavery, each being a slave and making slaves of others, finds that he remembers his old freedom in a game, mocking himself, and comically mimics fear and shame. He plays with death and animality, and reading in the shadows of his pallid flesh, I see the idea of Michelangelo's cartoon of soldiers bathing, breaking off before they were half done at some sortie of the enemy, an episode of the Pisan Wars with Florence. I remember how he showed their muscular limbs that clamber from the water, and heads that turn across the shoulder, eager for the slaughter, forgetful of their bodies that are bare, and hot to buckle on and use the weapons lying there. And I think too of the theme another found, when shadowing men's bodies on a sinister red ground, another Florentine, Pollaiolo, painted a naked battle. Warriors straddled, hacked the foe, dug their bare toes into the ground, and slew the brother naked man who lay between their feet, and drew his lips back from his teeth in a grimace. They were Italians who knew war's sorrow and disgrace, and showed the thing suspended, stripped, a theme born out of the experience of war's horrible extreme, beneath a sky where even the air flows with lacrimae Christi. For that rage, that bitterness, those blows, that hatred of the slain, what could it be but indirectly or directly a commentary on crucifixion? And the picture burns with indignation and pity and despair by turns, because it is the obverse of the scene where Christ hangs murdered, stripped upon the cross. I mean, that is the explanation of its rage. And we too have our bitterness and pity that engage blood spirit in this war. But night begins, night of the mind, who nowadays is conscious of our sins? Though every human deed concerns our blood, and even we must know what nobody has understood, that some great love is over all we do, and that is what has driven us to this fury, for so few can suffer all the terror of that love. The terror of that love has set us spinning in this groove, greased with our blood. These dry themselves and dress, combing their hair, forget the shame and fear of nakedness. Because to love is frightening, we prefer the freedom of our crimes. Yet as I drink the dusky air, I feel a strange delight that fills me full, strange gratitude as if evil itself were beautiful, and kiss the wound in thought, while in the west I watch a streak of red that might have issued from Christ's breast. I'm going to read now two shorter poems, love poems, which were written also during the war. The first is called The Inn. February is the shortest month, and good for this too, that we shall be one with the campaigning season, and that done, if I go where I would not, by the way I would not, on my journey I may say that as it was, it will be, and I should come back the way I would to where I would. Royal marriages were celebrated so, before the year's intrigues began. A royal woman and a man were joined like puppets to beget a love imputed by the plot, and set to move apart together. As you come, I go to the unknown, the way I do not know. That's in your arms, where now you know, and why the war will happen for this year. And we between us get and bear whatever is to be when we have been, that you may not be but the winter queen of schism in Bohemia, nor I, elector of an exile, where I'll die. With politics like these, the war uncharms our newborn marriage, that must learn such days as these that now return, are torn and are to tear us. Oh, but first we will lodge here. The weather may be cursed, but here's the inn. No manger but my arms, where none but you or I can do us harms. The second poem of this group is called The Question. And so we too came where the rest have come, to where each dreamed, each drew the other home, from all distractions to the other's breast, where each had found, each was, the wild bird's nest. For that we came, and knew that we must know the thing we knew of, but we did not know. We said then, what if this were now no more than a faint shade of what we dreamed before? If love should here find little joy, or none, and done, it were as if it were not done, would we not love still? What if none can know the thing we know of, but we do not know? For we know nothing but that long ago we learnt to love God whom we cannot know. I touch your eyelids that one day must close, your lips as perishable as a rose, and say that all must fade before we know the thing we know of, but we do not know. Towards the end of the war, I stopped trying to write poetry, and I wasn't able to begin again until a year or two after the war. Then I felt it was necessary to make something of a new start. The best poem of this period is another monologue of the type I had written before the war, but one in which I feel I have achieved a greater dramatic concentration than in some of the earlier ones. This is called The Old Age of Michelangelo. Sometimes the light falls here too, as at Florence, circled by low hard hills, or in the quarry under its half-hewn cliffs, where that collection of pale rough blocks, still lying at all angles on the dust-white floor, waits like a town of tombs. I finish nothing I begin, and the dream sleeps in the stone, to be unveiled or half unveiled, the lurking nakedness, luminous as a grape skin, the cold marble mass of melted skeins, chains, veils and veins, bosses and hollows, muscular convexities, supple heroic surfaces, tense drums and living chords and knots of love, sleeps in the stone and is unveiled or half unveiled, the body's self a veil, by the adze and the chisel, and the mind impelled by torment. In the empty quarry the light waits and the tombs wait for the coming of a dream. The power with which I imagine makes these things this prison, and while the dream stirs in the stone, wakes in its chains, sometimes I think that I have spent my whole life making tombs, and even those are unfinished, and yet chafing sadly closed there in a rich bare case of bodily loveliness like solid sleep, one sees the soul that turns waking, stretched on her side as if in pain, and how she sees, browed like the dawn, the dark world, like a sulky pale cold lowering dawn, loathing her hope of fruit, the pure bare flank, or else one sees her sunk in rest, letting her worn head droop over her empty body, and the much pulled breasts hang dry, fallen with long flat nipples. And there is always some victor and some vanquished, always the fierce substance and the divine idea, a drunkenness of high desire and thought, or a stern sadness. And while it rests or broods or droops, there will be always some great arm or shoulder to incur or to impose some heavy torment. There will be always the great self on guard, the giant reclined and ominous, with back half turned, hunched shoulder, and the enormous thigh drawn up as if disdainful, almost the bare buttock offered. There will be always a tall victory with beaten age doubled beneath its bent knee, but ignoring the naked proud youth bending aside his vacuous burning brow and wide beautiful eyes and blank lips, but ignoring the sad sordid slave, the old man. And now I have grown old, it is my own life, my long life I see as a combat against nature, nature that is our enemy, holding the soul a prisoner by the heel, and my whole anxious life I see as a combat with myself, that I do violence to myself, to bruise and beat and batter, and bring under my own being, which is an infinite savage sea of love. For you must know I am of all men ever born most inclined to love persons, and whenever I see someone who has gifts of mind and body, and can say or show me something better than the rest, straightway I am compelled to fall in love with him, and then I give myself up to him so completely. I belong no longer to myself, he resting from me, so great part of my being. I am utterly bewildered and distraught, and for many days know nothing of what I am doing or where I am. Young green wood spits in burning, dry wood catches the flame, and I become now an old man with a face like wrinkled leather, living alone and with no friends but servants, parasites, bad disciples, puffed up by my favours, or else popes, kings, cardinals, or other patrons, being as for myself alone, either a lord or subject, either with my gossips and buffoons and clumsy falling relatives, or towards you and such as you, whom I adore, an adject. Messer Thomas, Cavaliere, I am naked in that sea of love, which is an infinite, savage, glowing sea where I must sink or swim. Cold, burning with sorrow, I am naked in that sea, and know the sad foam of that restless flood, which floats the soul or kills. And I have swum there these 50 years and more, and never have I burned or frozen more than I have for you, Messer Tommaso. Moon cold or sun hot, through what alternations of energy, long languor, periods of mad defiance, periods of fear, flight, misery, cowering darkly, moon cold or sun hot, love that grips sun, moon, eternal hatred, eternal hope and pain, packed close in one man's body and drawn, leaning to others. And one other, grey eyes float in the dry light that might draw Venus' car, moving at morning, grey eyes through dry dark shadows, floating over the blocked ways, the despair, and opening wide lids, irises more star-like than the stars, purer than they, alive in the pale air, fire life in thin dry air, drawing the soul out at the mouth, beauty and triumph, my defeat. I am always alone, I speak to no one but that shabby Bernardo, nor do I wish to. Trudging up and down Italy, wearing out my shoes and life, toiling still to grow poorer, ugly, sad, proud, narrow, full of unfulfilled desires. Yet I have come to Rome, rich in its ruins, and for the last time, as if I made to cross a little stream dry foot that had divided us, and yet again, for the last time, my dream grows drunk within me, and opens its great wings, and like an eagle, wild, naked, perfect, pure, soars from its nest. Almost I am persuaded, almost, that it is possible. My love, like anybody's love, is possible. My eye stares on your face, and my old mind soars naked from its cliff, and thinks to find, drunk with illumination as the sky itself is drunken, or a dry riverbed with light, the wild path to its thought, for all is passion here, even cogitation, and it climbs and clambers, floats and flings and hovers, it is thrust up, it is hurled throbbing into the stillness, wrapped, carried by the blissful air, borne up, rebuffs and buffets, having hurled the dead world far below it, stretches out long rapturous claws and wings, stiff as with agony, shakes as with tenderness, and dives and hovers at you, swoops and aches to stun, caress and beat you to your knees, clutches and clings, as if it would grow one with you and carry up the solitary sky, that strange new beautiful identity, where it might never fade or melt or die. And many things are put about and taken up and spread abroad about Michelangelo, poor old man, but when I come to you, I care nothing. For honour or the world, I only care to look long on your face, and let the dream soar from its nest. For do I know myself what I should mean? I only know that if I had those wings, not in a dream, and if I could open, beat those wings, if I could clutch you in the claws of dream, and take you up with me in loneliness to the roof tree, angle of heaven, vault of exquisite pale buffeted glare, I should gain or regain the heaven of that high passion, pallor, innocence. I should gain or regain the so pure love, and fence it with my wings. But my two eyes are empty, having wept, and my skin stretched like an old hide over dry bones, and my face grown flat and timorous, broken, loving or having loved this dream. And the light fades from the sky, the dream dies in the stone. Slowly I finish nothing I begin, and in my evening, last torments and last light, torn hesitations between desire and fear, between desire and my disdain, emerging into dusky rooms, high halls, rich architecture, and the tawny roofs of Rome. For this love discovers only the world's desert and death, the dusty prison, where we have shut ourselves, or the sky shuts us. Fades the light, and below there I lie, an old man like a fallen god, propped up. My eyes close and my head hangs, heavy as if with love-drink or with dreams, and from my old thick swagging side pours forth a marble river. Overhead floats a face, two brilliant eyes that make the whole world pale, floating, and that great nobleness, that great despising of the mind, to which the beautiful is as the felt heat of the fire of the eternal. Do not forget the poor old man. The poems I'm going to read from now on have not been published in a book. I hope they will appear soon. They represent the writing of the last 5 or 6 years. The first one is called The Stolen Heart. It derives from a Polish fairy tale which I found in a collection in translation. The Stolen Heart. All the winter I have lain here and heard the big wind tug at the door and throb in the loophole, scare the mice that scurry and pause beneath the floor, and felt my heart leap up in fear at every sound, and seen men's eyes wide with amazement when I start and shudder, twitching arms and thighs, for none of them can tell what heart should make me pale and moist with sweat, even to think of one good stroke I gave in battle once or met, or how in such a fear I woke that day the witch came to my rest, and with her bony hand laid bare and stole the brave heart from my breast. She took the knight's heart beating there, and left me another, the heart of a hare. I crawl to the loophole, peep with care. The sun shines, pale blue hills are bare, bright rivers rush from melting snows. One dark pine rises up beneath, where the black stork built last year, and blue backwoods beyond the heath are overflown by rooks and crows. And there I hear the hounds at bay, so far that I can hear and bear, and follow the horn blown far away, and quake in longing and despair. Soon the swallows will return, and wars begin again in spring. My knights will ride out everywhere, but I shall still lie here and mutter, until one day a swallow's wing, dashed in the loophole, turn and flutter, and burst in a moment my heart of a hare. The next poem is called Coeur de Lion. It is based upon a poem which Richard Coeur de Lion himself wrote when he was lying prisoner in Austria. On his way back from Syria from the crusade, Richard was taken prisoner by Leopold of Austria and held to ransom for nearly 2 years. He wrote in his captivity this song called Janus Hompris, in which he reproached his friends for not ransoming him sooner. Coeur de Lion. Forasmuch a prisoner lies with no air or exercise, he has need to save his health of thoughts that will not give him grief. I have friends of name and wealth, but few of them have sent relief. Ask what they have done for me, those who yet go rich and free, all my barons, tall young men of Poitou, England, and Touraine. Once they were my friends, and then they never knew me false or vain. Much dishonour they may fear, should I lie 2 winters here. Men and barons they all know, not one could be so poor to me. I would let him stifle so, for want of money paid in fee. Some may think my capture sent, as deserved in punishment. Others, resting from alarms, live unconcerned in heart or head, though the fields are bare of arms, and I do homage to a bed. Not that I intend excuse from the chance of war, ill use, close confinement, fear and pain, but this is over and above. Of the others none complain, but worse than all is loss of love. The next poem is suggested, again a medieval subject, by some lines from a medieval poet, Guillaume de Provence, of the 12th century, who wrote a very long satire on the medieval world and made some remarks about the Templar knights, which suggested the poem I'm going to read. It is called Moult, sont, Prud'hommes, les Templiers. Kings and bishops murder law, yet we dare not complain. Scholars wind a rope of straw, call it a golden chain. Tired of these and worse, I would be sworn a Templar knight, for that order seems all good, were they not bound to fight. They have Golgotha to guard, and keep the passage free for all pilgrims, in regard of God by land and sea. Then they are true knights and brothers, no man keeps his own, all must share alike with others, so their love is shown. Their great houses, like their swords, are strong and burnished bright, poor in heart, and yet like lords they live to do men right. Yet their order I refuse, their friendship, name, and wealth I would rather miss than choose a battle for my health. Another of these medieval poems comes next. It is called Les Conges du Lépreux, the farewells of the leper. The title and the theme come from a poem of several hundred lines by Jean Bodel, a poet of Arras in the early 13th century. Having become a leper, he took farewell of his friends in these verses, which may be found in anthologies of medieval French poetry. He called it Les Conges du Lépreux. Plague and sores beyond relief have pierced me skin and bone. I must set up house with grief and travel hence alone. Death has forced me to content, and with a darkness buys me day. Poverty has paid my rent, and counts tomorrow for today. Pity with those two red eyes, and sorrow looking back on me, do these errands I devise to friends whom I shall never see. One who taught me how to write, Gerard of Pont-Louvain, pity, waft what I indite, and weep if it be plain. What he taught me now I find serviceable to my pain, so beyond my scabby rind I touch his friendship yet again. Now there's nothing sweet or sound left about me but my heart. Sorrow, as you go your round, give him that, and so depart. Those who catered to my woes when I was going rotten, sorrow thank, but also those by whom they were forgotten. They relieved my body once, and gave it pleasure in their hour, and the body I renounce, but I would not be rude or sour. Go and tell old Simon Hall, now that I peel from head to feet, with his good men by the wall, I can no longer sit at meat. Pity you may say good-bye to two more I shall miss, Hugo and Bertrel, and thereby look pale, and tell them this: they may sail for Palestine as I had done, and made up three. With their cross they can carry mine, the pagans have a truce for me. God has quit me of my vow, I owe no ransom for release. Say that I go with them now, although I die at home in peace. The next series of poems is a series of 15 short poems of 8 lines each, which I call The Court of White Stone. These poems are Strambotti. This is an Italian form, hardly used in English since Sir Thomas Wyatt introduced it in the 16th century. Wyatt translated several from Serafino dell'Aquila, and he also used it for the form for some epigrams referring to his own career. Strambotti became fashionable in Italy in the 15th century, after a Venetian nobleman, Leonardo Justinian, had used them to combine themes from folk song with a more delicate formal discipline. Justinian's collection of 27 Strambotti was printed towards the end of the 15th century, but these poems were widely known and sung earlier. Collections of folk songs made in Italy in the 19th century, such as Tigri's Canti Popolari Toscani, show that peasants were then still singing poems of the kind which Justinian knew. The Court of White Stone. I wish there were a passage underground that led by magic to your house and bed, so I could be beside you at a bound when I had made the journey in my head. Then I should disappear and not be found, and neighbours be persuaded I were dead. But I should be with you in paradise, where I could laugh and kiss your face and eyes. I am not lodged in such or such a street, but live in banishment with dust and stones. I wear these clothes you see for cold and heat, and yet I burn and shiver in my bones. Apparently I live and work to eat, but inwardly I die of wounds and groans. And you know well that you can bring me balm, my pearl, to whom I pray with open palm. The god of lovers chose you of his race, and for his house, and stayed when he was in. So I sit down before your noble face, and scan it, mouth and eyes and cheek and chin. No treasure could be found a better case, that bears in writing what is rare within. And so I read it on your forehead set, and live and breathe that I may have it yet. What thoughts could ride or hover in my mind before we met, I cannot now recall. You are the thread of gold I would unwind, until I wind it in a golden ball. You are the gate that I must pass to find my happiness, or find it not at all. Therefore all other thoughts I had give place to those good hopes I meet in your sweet face. If I could seize that castle, hill and plain, and have it compassed with a wall of glass, and lead you in, and with a granite chain make fast the gates of adamant and brass, when we were there shut up to entertain our love at leisure, no one else should pass, but we in games and banqueting engage, and never think of death or grief or age. If I could conjure shapes for you and me, I'd choose two living things that swim or fly, two fishes tumbling in a glassy sea, two eagles turning in a golden sky. And in those shapes we should continue free, and still in love until the sea ran dry, the air failed and the earth dropped in the sun, and time were ended, and we two were one. One thing we have, but maybe as the seeds that fell on thorny ground and could not grow. One thing we have according to our needs, yet burrs and briars may clog us as we go. One thing is certain, and the way it pleads, half sadly, telling us what we should know. But that would do away with worse desires, and bring us softly through a world of briars. The kingdom of our love is like a tree, grown from a little seed on level ground, but now it stretches over land and sea, and carries on its top an eagle crowned. Below a tent is hung for you and me, thick set with rubies in a border round, that says, I came into the world to serve you, and I may have your love, but not deserve you. Wanting more courage than a wandering knight, led by adventures on from place to place. Like him, if I should waver, I do right, to gaze in silence on my lover's face. For that pale oval shadow can make light in my account of danger and disgrace, and if they were to come, I would not yield, if I could have it painted on my shield. I'll take some wax and mould your likeness there, or roughly carve a figure out of wood, and in my exile take it everywhere, and tell it everything a lover should. My long desire, my constancy, my care, and such bad thoughts as love may turn to good, and think it is the sweetest thing save one, which is yourself alive under the sun. The lover who could wear you like a cross, that gave a blessing to his neck or arm, might travel through the world and fear no loss, disease, or danger, guarded by that charm. 1,000 seas and deserts he might cross, and climb up mountains and not come to harm. And I am safe from injury or spite, if I have kissed you for that day and night. Counting the heavy days and heavy hours, I measure out the prison of this town, and wear out stones with that desire of ours, but not desire, by walking up and down. And you are like a city full of towers, set by a plain or river, like a crown, and you are like a sunset and a star, but I am here alone, not where you are. I took my pen and added up the days dividing us, and meant my letter still to tell you of my patience in delays, and how it left me neither well nor ill. But shining like the sun with fiery rays that rushes from a cloud or climbs a hill, you rose and filled the sky with such a bliss that I could say no more, and sent a kiss. Who made this palace of so rare a stone, not to be daunted in 100 wars? For many came and wished it for their own, but could not capture it with men and stores. Why should it open when I came alone? Yet I have passed and shut the marble doors, and being in, now I must keep the key, for I'll have no one sharing it with me. And we are two, but neither tall nor short, and equally in love in heart and mind. And we are like two pillars of one fort, of equal faith and equally combined. And we are two, but one in every sort, if ever there were such among mankind, and others who have wished, alive or dead, to lie together in one grave or bed. The last of these poems is a short lyric suggested by Hans Andersen's fairy tale, The Snow Queen. It is called Autumn Journey. I saw from the gliding train a yellow birch in the woods below, and the dark pines close in again, and thought of dry leaves falling slow under the cold cloud shadows, horses of shadow loosed in dreams, and of the Snow Queen pale and fair, and Gerda looking for her Kay, poor Gerda, when she met the crow who led her in by the back way. So as they climbed the castle stair to reach the bedroom where he lay, dark horses plunged like shadows, long-legged on the wall in dreams. And Gerda, while her heart beat fast, came where he slept half turned away, and called him, and the dreams rushed past, and he awoke and was not Kay.